So we'll start. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. The room is almost full, and I know some of you probably enjoyed the great reggae concert on the main square yesterday evening. So I thank you for making it so early at 9 o'clock, although you probably didn't sleep much. Welcome to this panel session, the second panel session from the Data Journalism School. Panel session about how to produce data journalism content in a very broad sense in small teams. So a very hot topic now because a lot of media organizations are now trying to set up data journalism teams and trying to produce more of that type of content. So we'll try to answer a lot of questions of this in this field. Let me briefly introduce myself and the other panelists. My name is Antoine Laurent. I'm a senior project manager at the European Journalism Center, in charge of the organization of the School of Data Journalism here in Perugia. And I was previously a deputy director with the Global Editors Network, where I was in charge of the Data Journalism Awards. Here, I'm in charge of the School of Data Journalism, which we organize in collaboration with the Open Knowledge Foundation, and we are hosted here by the International Journalism Festival, which we thank very much for giving us this opportunity. The School of Data Journalism is, we like to say it's one of the biggest data journalism training events in Europe. We have over 10 workshops, very hands-on sessions to give any journalist the basic skills to start producing data journalism pieces, data visualization, data animations. We also have a few panel sessions like this one with over 25 speakers, so it's a great overview of what's being done in the field of data journalism. I think that's it for me, and I'll now present my co-panelists, beginning with Silke Grünewald from the Neue Zürcher Zeitung. She's heading the data team at NZZ, and we're very happy to have her here. Marie Cousin, coming from France, from the data journalism agency Ask Media. She's a data journalist there. Martin Bellam, so if I remember your new title, new formats editor at the Trinity Mirror, and who launched the acclaimed innovative venture at the Mirror, AMPED, doing some great data journalism, very, very popular. And finally, Mark Cabra, on my left, great investigative freelancer, award-winning, and also working for the International
International Consortium of Investigative Journalists.
ICIJ. Okay, all right.
ICIJ.
So we will start this panel with very short presentations by all the panelists to understand in what kind of setup, in what kind of team they work right now to produce data journalism content and data journalism pieces. So what's the size of their teams? What's the composition of their teams? Do they have coders or not, designers? What type of content do they produce? Because as you probably all know, the definition of what's data journalism is very broad. So we'll try to have a first overview of the setup our panelists work in. And after this presentation, we'll discuss with the panelists and, of course, with you, if you have questions, the different points we will tackle. So we didn't set up an order for the presentations. Who would like to start?
Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you for the kind introduction, Antoine. Thank you, of course, for having us, for inviting us, for bringing it up as a topic. Thank you for coming early in the morning. And I see that the room is nearly full, which is a good sign. Please feel free to ask questions and challenge us and be grumpy if necessary. As Antoine said, my name is Silke Grunwald. I lead a team of data-driven reporters with the Swiss daily Neue Zürcher Zeitung. And I would like to go back on the timeline when I started with working for the Neue Zürcher Zeitung. That was in 2012. And beginning then, I was a business and economics editor with the digital team. And as an economics editor, you need to cover on a regular basis macroeconomic data, for example, unemployment rates. And I started using that kind of data to experiment, especially in the field of interactives or data visualizations, mainly using data wrapper at its very early stage, or Tableau Public. And that somehow gained the attention of our editors-in-chief, which is great, to be on that radar in a positive sense. And they enabled me to become the first data-driven reporter, not bound to any specific topic, but they made it possible to cover all sorts of stories, from starting with sports, as said, macroeconomic data, business, anything that's in terms of foreign policy. So that was the very first step to put me out there in the newsroom as a lonesome writer, kind of. And because of lots of lobbying internally and externally, I was lucky enough to get, in a second step, some budget assigned to, and that budget allowed me to get designers and developers on board. And that team is a Zurich-based design studio. It's called Interactive Things, and since about a year, we have a steady cooperation, and that also went quite well. So for now, and that is the latest step in the development, we actually will manage to get 2 designers and 2 developers on board, starting, now the first colleague is starting on May 5th, so on Monday. So we will have them on board, I guess, until summer, and I hope we have the team up and running by fall. Yeah, as I said, we're quite free in what we may cover as in terms of topics. Maybe, Antoine, you can share the first one. I'll start with the light and infotainment piece that we did. Infotainment, Yuri Padlachikov, a portrait that we did. We accompanied him for about 6 months in the forefield of the Olympic Games. He's a Swiss snowboarder, for the people that don't know him. And yeah, that piece, it got the title infotainment piece by one of our readers. We actually managed to combine illustration, text, and video, plus a certain interactivity to let the user or reader experience his famous trip, the YOLO flip. YOLO for you only live once, as you might know. It was fun doing that because we had the opportunity to experiment a lot, and we did experiment a lot before we actually could publish that kind of pace. A more serious story that we did recently is the Migrants Files. The Migrants Files is a project that was run by a corporation of more than 10 journalists in about 6 European countries. Nicolas Kaiser-Brill from Journalism Plus Plus and I, we teamed up last summer, and we actually applied for a stipend by journalism.fund.eu that gave us initial funding to do the project. And of course, the NZZ participated in funding as well. And that led to a large-scale investigation using techniques of open source intelligence. For us, it was the first timer to do so. And we were able to set up a very comprehensive database that we published on March 31st. We see that as a start. We'd like to keep this project running, would like to keep the database up to date, but to do so, we need an additional funding, and that's the stage where we're currently at, with trying to get some money from different media houses, also from certain journalism funds that would be capable of funding this investigation. Another thing that we did is, with focus on Switzerland, that's the next step. Well, one more. Oh. Is a story where we did investigate lobbyism in Switzerland. Just ignore the ugly scroll bar, please. We actually had a look on parliamentarians and how they interact with private companies, with lobbyists, but also with their families, and set up a whole network that took us about half a year actually to get the data out there, to get the visualization. It was for us, it was the most challenging project in terms of visualizing this very complex data set. And I think overall, all these projects, all these stories are only possible because we collaborate internally with our colleagues from the different respective field, and to get their expertise on board, but also to have the opportunity to join up with external partners, whether it's designers, whether it's other reporters, whether it's legal experts or developers. It's only possible, those stories are only possible from our point of view when you actually build a strong team for that specific topic, to put those things out there stories that need to be told. As said, it's about building a strong team internally. We would also like to strengthen that community, especially in Switzerland, and that's why I'm also a co-organizer of Hacks Hackers in Zurich, together with my fellow colleague Benjamin, who is the managing director of Interactive Things, our cooperation partner. Yeah, that's it so far.
Should I show this one? No?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Silke. We'll now hear the next presentation. Mari, is it okay? Yeah.
Hi everyone.
Oh, okay.
Can you close yours?
I need to close mine. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. Hi everyone. So I'm Marie Coussin from a French small agency called Ask Media. We are now 10, and we are working to produce content, data journalism content for our clients, which are mainly medias. And we are working to produce print and interactive data journalism pieces. We are more focused on infographics and data visualization. We are lucky in our team to be 10, and we are 3 journalists, data journalist and project manager, because it's always big projects to run, 2 graphic designers, 3 developers, and 1 data scientist. It was important for us to recruit a data scientist because I work for data journalism from 3 years now, and I realize it's important to have someone who is really into the numbers, into the data, to be able to take us to another level of data journalism. So we are doing this for 2 years now in Ask Media, mainly for French newspaper like Paris Match or Le Parisien. We have weekly rubrics in these 2 media, and we are really aiming to produce information from the data. So we spend a lot of time into the data sets and trying to find the information we can bring to the publics in this. And also interactive from now, because the coders joined us 3 months ago, so it's a starting team, but it's working well. So I think for the presentation, you can maybe show some of our realization. If you scroll down the website, we have a part calling what we do or something like this. What we do, this one. So this is mainly print subjects. If you can maybe select the third one. Okay, this one. This one was for Paris Match. The aim was to deconstruct fixed IDs, which is our low-cost companies, really cheaper than regular airplane companies. So we decided to run a test, and we check out prices of every companies for if you want to start next day, in 3 months, or in 1 month. And we really reflect on the visualization also, because we had a lot of data to present. And it was for a print magazine, so it's the problem is a bit different when you are in an interactive masterpiece. You can choose your data, and so we decided to take this representation, we call a sunburst, so that we can see the differences of prices directly, and then you have certain information that you can gather if you don't want to dig into the data very deeply. So that's an example, and I like to.
Thank you, Mari. We'll maybe now hear Martin.
Hi. Yes, so I'm run Amped, which is a kind of experiment by a company called Trinity Mirror. We own the best-selling left-leaning tabloid paper in the UK. And with Amped, we wanted to take some of the lessons we'd learned about making things viral and socially shareable with another project that I'd worked on called Us versus Them, which kind of makes games and fun things for the internet, and try and apply it to more serious topics. And the Mirror as a brand is trying to distinguish itself from other tabloids in the UK by being a bit more serious and a bit more thoughtful than the other papers. And this seemed like an opportunity to try and tackle some more serious topics, but do it in a fun way. And kind of fun and mischief are two of the things that I think are very at the heart of what we do with Amped. We built it really, really quickly. I try and do this with projects because I've worked in the media for a long time, and it's so easy to get into a cycle of lots of meetings, and you write a strategy paper and you present it. And I'd rather just get stuff built and launched. So we went from the idea to being live in 8 weeks, which included hiring all the staff and doing the design and build. Rather than use our existing content management system, we built it on WordPress because we thought that would be easier for us to publish on, and we kind of fancied having a go. Previously, Us versus Them, we'd worked using Tumblr. We've got a very, very small team indeed. So on a day-to-day basis, we have 3 full-time journalists and me, and that's it really. We have one brilliant developer who's kind of built the site, and he's on hand if we kind of need bits of JavaScript doing. But really we've been trying to test a different type of data journalism content. How can you do something that's a bit popular? How do you do stuff around entertainment? We of course cover crime and education and the economy and kind of all the things that are the bedrock of data journalism, but we've been trying to do stuff in a fun way. So an example of this being a leading politician in the UK who's kind of runs an anti-EU, anti-immigrant party, which has become quite popular in the UK. He said that you could get a rush hour train in London and not hear anybody speaking English, and I know that isn't true. So, but we made a big kind of live social media stunt out of it by saying, right, we're going to go and catch this train now, and took a selfie outside the station and posted it on Twitter, and then kind of did a live count of how many people we could hear speaking English on the train, which obviously overwhelmingly everybody was speaking English. So for like 2 hours we were kind of just like zipping around on a train and tweeting, and then produced a piece like summarising the findings and representing them in kind of like the London Underground map style, which is perhaps like a more traditional type of data journalism visualisation. We could have done something really, really dry about the numbers of migrants in London, but that seemed like a more fun way of exploring it. And another thing that we kind of had really good success with, which perhaps we can bring up, is we did a real-time counter of how much money Wayne Rooney earns. So when he signed a new contract from Manchester United, and if you just scroll down, yeah, so basically it just counts up and then compares it to how much our Prime Minister is earning. Oh. And then if you go down a bit further, that's how much a nurse is earning. And then you can put in your own salary. Don't put in your own salary. We don't want everyone to know. And so that was kind of really depressing. But that was really, really, really popular. At the rhythm of our day, I mean, I don't know whether I'm actually any good as an editor, because my attitude is kind of, if someone cares enough to want to write a story, then I should just let them write it, because they obviously thought it was a good idea. But what we tend to do is we have a email group, and we kind of email each other at 7 o'clock in the morning with a list of, these are the things in the news that have interested us, and then the journalists basically pick what they want to work on themselves. I think you get better work out of people if they're doing something they're really interested in. So, I mean, I will sometimes say, okay, we need to cover X and Y, but usually people pick what they do themselves. And we're always trying to, we know because we're a small team, we can't out-news any of the big organisations. You know, like the BBC is always going to have more reporters on the ground than us. So we always try and look at what's our angle, what's the amped thing that we can do about this. And we also try and do topics that nobody else is doing. So this week we looked at the gender balance in the Star Wars films, and we looked at the thickness of Godzilla's neck over time to prove that he's getting into middle age and he's quite fat now because he's got a much bigger neck than he used to have. And so these kind of things are quite fun and quirky, but we also do really, really serious topics as well. And the other thing we do that I think is very different is we try and live fact-check politicians during the set-piece politics events in the UK. So there's a couple of TV shows and radio programmes which are kind of weekly debates that the BBC hosts, and we try and live fact-check that. And we've got a sort of library that we've built up over 4 months of charts and figures that we kind of know we've got the graphs. We do it on Twitter. We try and do it, again, with a bit of fun and mischief and sarcasm. And I think that tone allows us to, sometimes we'll say, you know, we're able to say things like, that number doesn't sound right to us, we'll get back to you on that. And we have some kind of like funny graphics for when politicians make really, really bad mistakes with numbers. And it just, again, to just try and bring a sense of the fact-checking, but also a sense of fun to it as well. And I've probably gone on for long enough, except for one other thing, which is absolutely everything we do has to work on the phone. In fact, you can see the Wayne Rooney thing doesn't line up particularly well on that desktop Windows thing. I didn't know it didn't work on that, but I don't really care. It's like if it works on the phone. So the peak usage for that Wayne Rooney was actually in the evening, about 10 p.m, 11 p.m. Most people using it on the phone, and most people using it because they've seen it on Facebook. And genuinely, I believe if your content doesn't work on that small screen, you're basically dead in the water, I think, with the way audience behaviour is moving. I think there's a massive disconnect between how we produce content on big monitors in offices and the bulk of our audience are using these devices. In the UK, for us, it's only between 9 and 4 on a weekday when people are chained to their office desk that we see desktop usage being more than mobile usage. At all other times of the week, we see more usage on mobile than anything else. And so that's my manifesto for mobile.
Thank you, Martin. And to finish the presentation, we'll hear now Mar.
Okay, great. Well, it's encouraging to hear all these experiences throughout Europe. Last year, part of this was not happening, and I guess next year we're going to have many panels like this from different countries, and it's not going to be one Swiss, or it's going to be like half of Switzerland here, half of France, the whole UK, and I hope more people from Spain too. My name is Mar Cabra, and I work for the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the ICIJ. We are actually doing a panel on our investigation of offshore leaks later, so this is a advertisement, the advertisement part of my talk. And I'm project research manager at the ICIJ, but I also have a parallel life as a Spaniard in Spain producing data journalism as a freelancer. So I wanted to share both experiences with you. And I'm going to start with the ICIJ, because it's a very different model to what we're used to here in Europe. The ICIJ is, we call ourselves, I don't know, you can argue that in the question time, the world's best cross-border investigative team. We are a network of 185 reporters in more than 65 countries that work together in cross-border collaborations. This means that all these journalists in our network are basically in our circle of trust, which is very important when you produce investigative journalism. And we tap into our network to actually use the local knowledge and not to do parachuting reporting, and to actually use the local knowledge to do better reporting. So how does that translate when we do a story? Well, my boss, Gerard Ryle, got a leak of 260 gigabytes of data that basically belonged to two offshore service providers, so the two companies in tax havens that basically set up companies in tax havens for the wealthy and the rich, and basically to hide who they are. Not to avoid taxes, it could be just hiding who they are. So very important effect into our economy, right? 260 gigabytes amounts for 2.5 million files and around the names of people behind more than 100,000 offshore companies. So the way we worked is, instead of having the leak to ourselves and getting that data and analyzing all those files by ourselves, we tapped into our network and basically distributed the data into countries and then send it to all the reporters in those countries and use their local knowledge to basically mine that leak. We later work collaboratively in doing the reporting, and whenever our reporters on the ground and those collaborations, they find something, we put it together and we do a big investigation. So that's the case of the offshore leaks investigation, and the second part of the offshore leaks investigation, which is China leaks, which is what you are just seeing there. These are some examples of the reporting partners we have. We not only work with the journalists in our network, we also work with established media outlets, and that is very important because us media organizations are somehow very stupid. So some media editors don't value a topic sometimes if, like, the Guardian is not on board or the BBC is not on board. So having a big media organization on board allows us to actually convince other people and to build, for example, for this investigation, we worked more than 100 reporters in around 60 countries, and we work with around 50 media organizations. This is just alphabetically ordered, but we worked from El País, for example, in Spain, to El Confidencial in Spain, to DR in Denmark, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, The Guardian, The Washington Post. And basically, they do the reporting and then they all share the findings, so we are published together at the same time. We do traditional investigative journalism mixed with data-driven reporting. And for example, with the leak, instead of just putting everything online, WikiLeaks style, or between that and just keeping it to ourselves, we found some middle ground, which is part of the structured data we had for the leak we published in the Offshore Leaks database. If you go to the offshoreleaks.icij.org, you'll be able to find this database that was built collaboratively with La Nación in Costa Rica, which is a newspaper, very powerful newspaper over there, which had a very good data-driven team. So we didn't have any programmers on staff. We collaborated with some programmers along the way. For this, we worked with their unit, and they produced it with our guidance, and we worked together on this. So you could actually go to the display, check on all countries, and see, for example, Italy, and see what are the names of people in Italy that are connected to some of these offshore entities. And For example, if you clicked, this is one of the names that was reported by Leo Sisti, who's an Italian reporter we worked with. And you can, if you click on these links, you'll be able to see, for example, this woman, Silvana Inzadi Ingarimate di Garimati, however that is pronounced, excuse my Italian. And then you can click on the nodes and explore all those connections. So basically, we started like a second phase of the reporting, which is by putting this data up online and tapping into basically the world, and with our partners all over the globe, promoting this news app. Basically, we got around 600 tips, and we're actually right now investigating a bit more based on the tips we got. And the website got around, last figures I have is like around 7 million page views, and it was kind of like basically accessed through every single country in the world, more than 200 countries. Can you click? We also, whatever we do is kind of like shared. So for example, for a second part of our investigation called China Leaks, what we did is we produced an interactive graphic built on JavaScript on D3. And basically, this is a nice interactive graphic on who in China, according to our leak, who was in our leak from China that was using tax havens, and we found around a dozen people related to the red novelty in China, and around 16 people related, very rich people in China using the offshore world. And we produced this interactive, and if you click on the faces, you can kind of like see all the connections and who are these people. This is an example of how we work collaboratively. This was produced by a programmer in DC, in Washington, DC, in the United States. The drawings that you see are drawn by a cartoonist in Chile. I was doing some work from Spain. And then all of our media partners, or around 10 media partners, helped us translate this into 6 different languages. Because after all, this is a spreadsheet. So it's kind of easy to give them, shared access to a Google spreadsheet and let them translate, and then, you can just change the code to just tap into one spreadsheet or another. So we do those type of things, and that's thanks to basically working collaboratively. We're able to do more things than we could do on our own. Although, thankfully and luckily, we finally hired 2 programmers. So right now, we actually hired the guys that built the Offshore Leaks database, Rigoberto Carvajal and Matthew Caruana Galicia. And they are actually they are 2 programmers working for us from Costa Rica. So headquarters in Washington, they're working in Costa Rica, I work in Spain, and basically, we can produce nice projects together. It doesn't matter where we are. Our offices are connected through Skype. So that's what we do at the ICIJ, and basically the finance model is a very special finance model because we're a non-profit media organization. This means that our business model is not based on advertisement revenue, but based on foundation support. And that means that when we approach media organizations, The Guardian or El País, we offer what we have for free. So that is a very different collaboration that when you are actually a freelancer and trying to sell things. So that's why I also wanted to kind of like share with you my experience as a freelancer in Spain, which is a very similar outlet situation than Italy. And it's kind of like different when you go asking for money, right, from the outside. So I'll be uploading all these links of this presentation in my Twitter account, which is Cabra Lens, Cabra Lens, just in case it's of use. But basically, I guess, as a freelancer in Spain, it's been hard for me and for others doing data journalism in Spain to actually get the money the project costs. So basically, one of the projects we did is Ayuda al Desarrollo de Orillas. I think it's the next slide. Oh, no, I didn't put it. Internet problems didn't allow me to put can you click on the first one, please? So basically, how did we follow the money of more than 22 billion euros spent by Spain on development aid and producing this website and traveling to 5 countries to actually check on the ground what was happening with the cuts on development money? Well, we had to do it thanks to foundation support too. So thanks to the European Journalism Center grant and the European Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the journalism grants, we basically were able to do that. This project, we got like around 20,000 euros. No media organization would have paid that. However, we collaborated with media organizations, basically selling on the point of, okay, I give you this 20,000 euro project for like 1,000. So that was kind of like an easier negotiation. However, my experience is that it's been very hard to get more than 1,000, or even the project that I know got more money in Spain, that was not one of my projects, got like 3,000 euros for a data-driven journalism project that cost much more. So basically right now, it's very kind of like difficult to convince media organizations to pay what this costs, because they are in kind of like this kind of like squared-minded like mode where they're like article 200. Small piece, 100. So basically data-driven application, data-driven story, team, like a story built by a team of 4 people doesn't fit their kind of like a way of budgeting or paying freelancers. So sometimes it's like you have to work around the rules and basically, okay, I'll do a piece, but it's a more complicated piece, so you charge for the piece, but then it's kind of like a weird negotiation. So I guess a lot of us that are doing freelance data journalism in Spain get most of our money through training, and that basically subsidizes then our passion to produce stories. And I guess my last bit of advice, or something that I found very useful in Spain, which, by the way, for some context, we didn't have a freedom of information law until last December, and it's not still into effect. So we are a very opaque country where access to data is not normal, and where no big media organization, well, there's no media organization has a data journalism unit in Spain. There are some data-driven reporters in one media organization, 2 data-driven reporters, and that's it. That's Spain. So basically, I guess something I've found very useful is to tap into the open data community and work with hackers and developers over there that are interested in basically making Spain better in their free time. So, for example, when I was freelancing this summer on a commercial radio in Spain, and I had a 1-hour part in a bigger show, 1 hour, how do you say that? 1 hour segment in a bigger show about news, and we were doing with that 1 hour like data-driven stories and looking at the news through data. I tapped into the open data community, and I found, like, for example, some people can you go to the last one? That one, last one. There's one more? No, there's one more. No. There. I found these people, Proyecto Colibrí, which basically are some programmers that just found it was fun to actually scrape data from the Congress, from the Spanish Congress, and make it reusable. So they gave me some data on politicians, and we, commented on that, and actually I credited them for their work. Or we did something on beaches and, how clean are the Spanish beaches in the summer. And that was done because some programmers on their free time thought it was fun to scrape some data on how clean the Spanish beaches were. And, we just worked together based on credit and basically reusing their work, which was already out there. So the open data community to me as a freelancer in Spain has been very useful. And I think with that, I've spoken more than any of them, so I'm shutting up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mar, and thank you everyone for your presentations. To start the discussion, I would like to ask you all a question about something all of you almost mentioned. This is the difference between working within a team, within a newsroom on data journalism projects, and working as a freelancer or within an agency outside the newsroom. So obviously these are somehow the two solutions that newsrooms or media organizations have right now to produce data journalism pieces or projects. And it seems that obviously only the biggest newsrooms and the let's say more wealthy newsrooms can set up data journalism teams, but it's not the case actually, as we see, for example, for the case of Silke, which works for a very important newsroom in Switzerland, but it's somehow medium-sized newsroom which created a real data journalism team. And also in the case of Martin, we see that the media supporting you, or your media organization made somehow a big bet on a new, very innovative and different projects. So what would be your remarks to these questions? Within the newsroom or outside with freelancers, and there would be also the next question, about the need or the interest of international collaborations. But so maybe we can start with Silke, if you have any reaction to.
At the NZZ, we clearly decided to go for the integrated approach, building up a team that solely focuses on data-driven journalism. But as I mentioned in my introduction, we're taking next steps, and the next step will be a team of developers and designers in the newsroom. Not only designers, but also a graphic design person that is working with different fonts or illustrations, for example. And that team will be called Interactive News, and I guess they will be actually get into action this summer, this fall. Whereas my team, we will be part of the reporter team. So we're pooling up. So on the one hand, you got the technical expertise in terms of coding, in terms of design, and on the other hand, you got us as a sort of in-depth reporting and analysis team. And we'll see how we manage to build the bridge between those two teams, but I'm pretty sure we'll manage that. I was very much engaged in the whole employment process. I was able to get a coder from the open data community on board. So he has a certain interest already, and he showed that in the past. And I'm pretty sure he's going to be a very close colleague of mine in the very near future. But as I said, it's an integrated approach, and at the same time, the wording, data-driven journalism, becomes less important, but we're solely focused on what we do, which is in-depth reporting and analysis, which is coding, which is design. And hopefully, managing the mobile world as well as you described it, Martin. What we've seen from our examples so far, they are desktop-driven so far. So that's going to be a topic as well, just at the side. And I said, I strongly believe in that approach. I'm part of this. I'm building it up. Yet I can understand that other media organizations choose a different approach and saying we separate those ventures, like you did. Very understandable, very impressive what you did and how fast you did it. We're a bit slower, but I guess for the 2 years that we've been doing this, I'm a bit proud of my team, and only a bit. I'm very much proud of that team, and I know that we're very fortunate to having that opportunity within the NZZ.
Maybe one question reflecting on what you said at the beginning, that to get your editors on board to set up this team, you've done a lot of internal lobbying, and so the question would be, so why did they follow you on this? Because in the media industry landscape right now, it's quite obvious that the money is not flowing, and some really media executives are quite direct, saying we can't invest in that type of content because of there's no return on investment, or we don't have the capacity right now. So how did you convince them, or why were they actually interested in that type of investment?
I've never asked them, to be honest, and it probably would be best to ask them to answer that question. I guess I can be pretty convincing, but I'm also quite demanding. So no, I just kept on fighting and did stories, and those stories, they didn't have a direct return on investment in the sense of that that there is a financial return, but we gained the attention of the reader, and the readers came back to us, and I guess we caught the attention of our readership first, and then our editors-in-chief discovered, oh, there are people down there that are doing sometimes some pretty good stuff down there that is shared, for example, that is commented. There is a reader perception that this is something that interests us in the way of doing reporting, but also in the way of representing the information or the respective story. And I guess that's how it started. And of course, yes, I know it's a bit of luck, and that we do this, and that we may do this, and that we have now a new CEO that fosters it, and that actually gave his go last year to put those 4 new employees on the team. It's an investment, and it's risky, but it's up to us to make the most of it, and I'm pretty sure we'll do that.
Thank you, Silke. And now I will turn to Martin, because Silke mentioned one of the important factors to develop the data journalism team was the interest of the readers, the direct interest, and the popularity of that type of content. And this is something you're really directly working on with MPED, really trying to design short pieces, mobile ready, and very popular. Probably it's your own interest, but also of your media organization. So could you reflect on this?
So when we've been doing these projects, we're quite brutal about it, actually. So we only gave AMPT 3 months to prove itself, and so we hired everyone on the basis that it was a 3-month job and that it might not continue after that. That's great, actually, because it kind of self-selects people who are prepared to take a risk. So, Comrade had a perfectly good, steady job at the Telegraph, and he chucked it in to come and do AMPT for 3 months. It's brilliant. You've got someone who's obviously you've managed to really enthuse them about the idea of the project. We've kept the team separate from the newspaper newsroom. I thought it was important to really build a close-knit team rather than to feel that you were just 3 people stuck on the edge of a big news organization. So we sat on a different floor. I think now that we're more established, we will move closer and work more with actually the newspaper newsroom. Making data journalism, I suppose, populist data journalism or popular data journalism. So with our other project, Us versus Them, it turns out everybody loves cats on the internet. It's a lot harder to get people interested in unemployment figures than cats. And if I'm honest, we haven't hit really the traffic figures that I was hoping for. But it was obvious after about 6 weeks that it was just really good. I mean, that sounds a bit conceited, but it's just really good content, and everybody was enjoying it. And I think the organisation is pleased with it and proud of the type of content, and so suddenly hitting the traffic figures hasn't been as important. We did a kind of jokey piece about Avril Lavigne's dreadful new video, and we did a chart of her sort of like racial stereotypes of Asian women over time compared to her early videos, and at one point that was the most read article on the whole of the Mirror's site. And people suddenly noticed that as well. Your like topping chart beat is one of the pieces from AMPT. So the Wayne Rooney thing was probably the biggest thing, and we're also trying to, I don't think we get stuff right all the time. So we did. There's a thing in the UK where most police officers, their training to handle victims of domestic violence is basically done online. They do an e-learning module. There's no face-to-face training. And we kind of think it's one of those areas where perhaps you need a bit more sensitive handling of victims, and perhaps the training could be better. What we tried to do was make the article itself kind of like an e-learning module. So you kind of, the audience are asked questions as they go through. So it's almost like a traditional article, but you only get chunks of it at a time. And I don't think it worked for that topic. I'd like to try that again with something perhaps less harrowing than domestic violence. In terms of making stuff work for mobile, I made a dreadful mistake a few weeks ago by basically really crudely oversimplifying a map of the UK, and it really, really upset lots of data geeks. And to be honest, I was more concerned about, was the map the right size to fit on this, and I spent ages fiddling about with the graphics so that the UK would basically fit on the phone, and kind of didn't really care so much that the borders had got flattened. I just basically drew crude straight lines across the map to divide north, middle, south, because that was how the data was. I think that was an error. But we're always trying to do things, and you're right, I think it's really, really hard to represent these complex stories on this device, and we will make mistakes, but that's what we're really, really aiming for.
One question maybe about the tools you use, because it's obvious that you don't produce that type of very elaborate and complex interactive pieces, but still you use a few data refining or data presentation tools. Is this important for your work in your team, and can this replace somehow the work you could do with a technologist or a coder?
Yeah, I'm always deeply jealous actually when I see everybody else's stunning, beautiful visualizations, and AMPT basically has to rely on my Photoshop skills. But yeah, so we use WordPress, we use Data Wrapper, and that's about it really. And again, because of the phone, so basically we've customized Data Wrapper to make sure that we're happy that it works on the phone, and then we have small bits of JavaScript, and basically, you know, most of the people on the team can write a crappy bit of JavaScript up to the point where we've broken the site, and then we email Will and say, we're trying to do this thing, we've broken it, and he'll kind of fix it. So yeah, it's not, we don't really have, I'd always envisaged that we would have a track of longer term projects, but to be honest, with such a small team, we try and produce, I guess, between 3 to 6 articles a day. We'll try and, I'm very much believing, I don't know if you know Quartz, QZ.com. They talk about how having success with social media is all about being short and quick with something, or doing it really in depth. And there's kind of like a trough in the middle of 500 to 800 word pieces that don't do so well on social media. And so we try and follow that. So we either really do something very comprehensively, or we try and do a really quick snap take on it. And so no, we haven't produced. I think our original description said we were going to do data visualizations and infographics. I took that off our Twitter bio a week ago and replaced it with just a disclaimer that we're not responsible for all the data on the internet, because that seems funnier.
Thank you, Martin. So we're now seeing, I think, Quartz, the Quartz website on the screen. So there is indeed a similar layout, and yeah, you can see the type of content they produce.
My design brief to the designer for AMPT was, can I have Quartz? But it looks like it's from the Mirror. That was basically the design brief.
Maybe a remark from Marie on the question of, you know, working on data journalism as freelancers or as a newsroom staff member. You're part of a data journalism agency working for many different types of newsrooms, magazines, print newspapers, and other media organizations. Do you think it's a good way to produce data journalism, or do you think it could be interesting for other data journalists, designers, and coders to form that type of agency in order to, you know, find a sustainable activity in data journalism?
Indeed, the question is a bit tricky, because Ask Media was really created because of this fear of French media. every French media was interested in data journalism. They always said it's very interesting. We want to have this kind of piece on our website, but they were not ready, except Le Monde or some exceptions. They were not ready to integrate all these competencies, these skills in their newsroom. So we developed Ask Media. And I realize now for 2 years of nearly of working in this kind of models that we also add some values for this newsroom, because as we are only working on data basis, we developed a form of different point of view from the information, the journalism pieces. And now I think media come to us not only for what we are producing, the data visualization and this kind of thing, but also to have other vision of what the information can be. I was unsure it could be possible, but in fact I realized this. They are looking for other subjects and other way to treat information. But the risk for the agency model is that it's still fragile, because if you lost 1 client, 2 clients, you can close the agency. So, so the question of grouping different agencies is in fact a good question. I don't know if it's, but that's why Mara experience is very interesting, because we, at least in France, we are not used to work with other journalists and with other international journalists all the more. So I think it can be a solution to develop more ambitious data journalism pieces, and because media cannot subvention or finance one piece, it's difficult. So I hope it can be a solution, but I think it's still difficult to put in place.
Thank you, Mari. And maybe Mar and Zilke, you can react to this, because indeed it seems that the large-scale international collaboration between big media outlets and freelancers, and sometimes managed by an international organization like yours, Mar. It seems like a model which is working quite well to attract funding and to get a lot of impact for the content you produce. What's your impression on this, Mar?
Okay. Oh well, I used that one. I don't know, it's not that easy. It takes, I think that when working in international collaborations, there's a part that is hardly spoken about, which is the coordination part, which is kind of like the one that takes most of the time, not only for data projects, but especially for data projects. So basically, sometimes it's like, it's not traditional reporting in the sense that it's not that we have to go to the field, and it's just we become like publishers and like sellers and you know, and basically coordinators, traffic, like air controllers, right? That's how you call the people in the airports, right? That are controlling the planes. So that's a part that I didn't value that much until I did this work. So I guess we do at the ICIJ a lot of that, and that is very valuable for things to work. It is not easy to get partners on board, as I was saying, maybe in a very passionate way, so I'm just going to say it in a more polite way now. It is very difficult to convince media outlets to collaborate with each other, even in different countries. So we found one of the successful techniques is to actually get one big media partner on board, and that actually helps. Getting other media partners interested, and then you have to have a very hot topic. Getting people on board for a normal project is not that easy. I mean, I've been with the ICIJ for over 3 years now, and we did a 2-year series called "Looting the Seas" on fish, and on what were the forces that were basically looting the oceans. Why are the oceans running out of fish? And convincing media organizations to actually publish that was not that easy. Even offshore leaks, as important as that investigation was not easy to get people on board. Because, you know, I remember going to a very important media outlet in Spain that didn't publish the story with, hey, I have the names of 70 people connected to to offshore companies. This is going to be a global investigation, so Le Monde is going to be on board, and the Washington Post is going to be on board. And they looked at me, and after thinking about it, they said, 70 names, you know? Is there corruption there? I mean, offshore, there's nothing illegal there. I mean, of course, parentheses, I come from a country where kind of like corruption is in the front page every day. So, of course, the limit, you know, kind of like the level of you have to meet to be in the front page is very high. But they didn't quite understand the power of global investigations. So I was very happy to see that media outlet republishing stories that had been done by Le Monde, by other media outlets internationally, when we all published on April 4th last year, and we made a big splash. So sometimes convincing them is not that easy, and it has to be like a very, very hot topic. And I really like my Gerard Ryle, the ICIJ director, always says the topic we pick has to be able to be in the front page. If you don't think it's going to be a front page topic, then we need to think about it twice to make such an investment, because we spend an average of 8 months on a project.
Well, going back to your first point, the coordination part. I've rather, in the last couple of months or the last year, I often have the feeling my correct job title should be project manager, because that's part of my daily business. Is right now is a lot, as you say, it's lots of coordination, and I haven't done that before. So that is new, and that is challenging. Yet, especially concerning the migrants files, it was a thoroughly positive experience. No bad feelings at no point in time. Of course, we had Nicola as a very strong lead who took care of us and our work. But it went really well, even though that we had a very tight schedule because we needed to publish by end of March. So we had about 4 months to do that sort of investigation. That was also, to most of us, and journalists involved, was new. So new method, new colleagues, different languages, new topics, so on and so forth, but yet we managed to do it, but only because there was a strong lead doing the coordination and calling us up, looking at the milestones, looking at the time schedule, so on and so forth. Concerning international collaboration, we are open, at the NZZ side, we are open to do so, but it is definitely always up to discussion. Every time, every single case needs to be discussed. But we need to push that, because I think it's the only way to manage large-scale investigations. As you say, 8 months. That hasn't been done yet by the Neue Zürcher Zeitung until recently, until we started this in-depth investigations. And to do so, we need to partner up, not only with media outlets, but also with experts from the different fields. I mentioned that you have a data scientist on your team. We don't have that, but we get them on board if needed. So that's also part of the collaboration. Legal experts, very, very important on the different levels, whether national or international. We need experts plus other media outlets plus freelancers. And I know we do not pay well, that's true. But nevertheless, we need those collaborations. And yes, they need to be coordinated, and then I come into play and be the project manager.
Silke, you mentioned you needed a lot of different skills to build a data journalism team and data journalism pieces. And one of the most cited and most important skill is the web design and development skill most of the time to produce interactive pieces. And I would like to ask you all, what's your take or your relationship with coders and technologists when you work on data journalism pieces? Because most of the time there's this, or it's talked about this kind of myth of the data journalist, you know, like somebody able to report, to analyze data, and to code from, you know, from zero. Big interactive piece. This is the new hero of the newsroom, but in fact it's a lot of collaboration between a lot of people with different skills. And how do you do, for example, Martin, in your team you said you had only 4 journalists, and you're working very closely with your developer who developed the website, and maybe who's also very regularly helping you on interactive pieces, but maybe your journalists also have that type of skills?
Yeah, so it's kind of, it's the should journalists learn to code, isn't it? And I feel really depressed about this question, because the other thing I do is like design and user experience, and at every design conference there's usually a panel about whether designers should learn to code. And so my take is, as always, this: basically, if you're a journalist working in digital and it's never occurred to you to find out how HTML and CSS and JavaScript work, I think that's weird, and you might be in the wrong job, because you're clearly not curious enough to be a great journalist if you've never wondered how that gets together. But whether you should devote hours and hours and hours to basically becoming a mediocre developer, I don't know about that either. But what I think is that we use computers day in, day out, and there are loads of things that, you know, just in terms of becoming much better at spreadsheets and much better at kind of writing macros, those kind of things, that I think would benefit most journalists. But the thing I always say at design conferences is love your developers. So, you know, most people think developers are a bit weird and antisocial. Well, most people think journalists are a bit weird and antisocial as well, and we should get together and have an antisocial loving. And I think developers, you know, make the difference to everything that goes on this device, whether your website works quickly, whether it's easy to use. The developer ultimately is what makes the difference there, and so finding good developers and befriending them, I think is a really great skill. I've been lucky to work with some really, really good devs. So yeah, so I think be curious about how code works, and, you know, learn a little bit, as much as you feel happy and comfortable doing. Learn stuff that's useful for your job, but find good developers and trust them.
Mar, I don't know if you have coders or technologists in your team at the International Center for Investigative Journalists?
Yes. And yes, with a very big smile. I'm so happy my boss decided to hire 2 programmers. I feel a very happy camper. Basically, but we didn't have them. I mean, Rigoberto and Matthew started like 2 weeks ago. At the ICIJ, we used to hire the same that we collaborated with journalists. We collaborated with programmers for certain skills, for certain parts of some projects. I guess in my experience working with programmers is journalists and programmers share one thing, which is curiosity. I find it easier to actually get programmers on board when you give them a challenge, right? So as I was saying, last week we were having a data journalism conference in Spain that I organized with some other journalists there, and some people after a talk, I was talking about this website, contrataciondelestado.es, so basically public procurement website that where the state puts up not all of them, but most of their contracts of the of central government, and that website is out there, and I just find it fascinating. It's one of my favorite websites, right? Because I go in there, and not only you can get a story of an outrageous thing that happened that day, if you happen to see that that contract, you could also kind of like, if you automated the search and basically scraped the whole registry, you could start seeing who's the main contractor of the state. And for example, we have a very big El Corte Inglés. I don't know if you know, it's like Macy's or Harrods, and it's like, I really want to know El Corte Inglés, you know, how much money do they get from the state? Because they basically are the travel agency of pretty much every ministry, right? So I kind of said that in a conference, and like afterwards, like there were 2 programmers from a startup that were like, oh my God, we are working this startup, and this has nothing to do with journalism, but we find it fascinating. We want to help you scrape this website. We think it's great. We think it's, you know, I don't know, it just motivates them because they're as curious as me to know whether El Corte Inglés is one of the top contractors of the state. So I guess that is what I found whenever I work with programmers. I try to find a common excitement, a common challenge, and Rigoberto, which is one of our programmers, he's very sweet, and I really like him. And he's like, oh, I like working with you guys because kind of like you're my superheroes, and we can be superheroes together. And it may sound like naive, but I really like it because I think it really kind of like is a very nice way to actually put a visual into how we both share the curiosity and kind of like can save the world together.
Thank you, Mar. If Zilke or Mari, you have a reaction, maybe share it now, but otherwise we will maybe take a few questions from the audience because we have 10-15 minutes left. So I don't know if you want to react on the coders, loving and superheroes and...
Yeah, I have to spread the love as well. No, I do. Honestly, just briefly, I write words, my colleagues write code, and that's it. They are technical authors, if you like, whereas I'm a writing author or something like that. So it's maybe you have to overcome that discussion at some point in time as well, who needs to code and what to. It's about understanding and working together. Again, it's all about collaboration. I can't succeed without my fellow colleagues, and they can't succeed, hopefully, without me and my team. That's it. And spread the love.
Thank you. A few questions from the audience. Do we have the microphone? Yeah, so a lot of hands raised.
Hi, I have a question to Marc Cabra. I'm kind of in the same situation like you. I'm in a team of about 5 or 6 journalists, and we're working on a grant project of 20,000 euros at the moment. But as you know, the next project will come along, so I wanted to ask you, how much time do you specifically dedicate to finding new grant money?
So as I said, I mean, I have 2 lives, and the life that allows me to do other things in my free time is the ICIJ. So I have a salary every month. So I don't have to worry that much about like surviving every month. So I'm not exactly the right person to answer that. I think that 20,000 euro project, which seems like an IDR grant too, actually it is very useful. It would be like a platform to showcase what great things you can do. I think that it would be very difficult. Probably, I don't know what country you are, but it would be very difficult for a media. There's some Austria people over there that can help answer it, but nobody's going to pay you 20,000 euros to approve a project. So just think smaller, think wiser. What I try to do. Spain is a very shitty country in terms of information. So I love having kamikaze projects where I'm like, oh yes, I want to know who's the main lobbyist when we don't have a lobbying law and we don't have any information. You know, I want to know about revolving doors And I'm going to think of clever ways of talking about revolving doors when we don't have that information public. So those are some of my kamikaze projects that I do long term in my free time, in my evenings, in my Saturdays, in my Sundays, you know. And then I try to do smart projects of like, okay, from this shitty situation, is there any nice shit that we can turn into gold, you know? So for example, the project of development aid was one of those. It was kind of like hidden in this government website. All of a sudden, I mean, you would not find these spreadsheets through the menu, like through the tree of the ministry website. But all of a sudden, in another project, I found these data sets that were just basically Excel files with every single project paid for by every single agency in Spain. Spain is a decentralized country. Every time you have to do data, sometimes you have to ask 17 places. So all of a sudden, it was there a spreadsheet with, I didn't have to ask anybody. It was there, downloadable, and all in one place. So I thought, oh, one day I'm going to do something about it. So try to think on small things, quote unquote, easy things that you can do, that you can go to places and say, hey, I've done this project for 20,000 and see how cool it is. I can do this something smaller for 500, you know. That's would be my advice.
Next question.
You guys are familiar with the concept of the desert island discs, the records that you would take to a desert island with you. What are your desert island tools?
Can't I just take the internet? Wow, that's an amazing question. I don't know, if I was stuck on a desert island, I would just take records, I think, and just, you know, what am I going to investigate from there? So the main thing I think is that basically everybody learns to hate every tool that they work with. So, you know, Data Wrapper is amazing, and I have a list of really, really irritating niggles with it, and I assume it's better than anything else, and we've been building a kind of in-house charting solution for the wider group, and I'm sure I'm going to end up with a different but equally irritating set of niggles there. I don't know, wow. Yeah, I would probably take WordPress. WordPress would be my thing. I would take WordPress.
No. I would take another person with me. I would not take a tool. I think I would take a programmer. I would take Rigoberto with me to a desert island. Not because I like Rigoberto or I want to like. He has a very nice partner. So it's not in that way. But I think that people working together is the best tool. I mean, yeah, that's my answer.
I will take a spreadsheet tools because if we don't have it, we can see any of the data. So it's a basis, but very necessary.
I guess I would take a proof finder filled up with lots of records to work through all by myself.
Thank you for your answers. We can take, I think, 2 or 3 last questions.
Thank you. We're all working with limited resources here, so what kind of heuristics do you use in deciding which stories to take, especially long-term stories? Which kind of measurements do you use for success? And how does that influence the next decision on what to take on?
Yeah.
I have a very quick answer on the ICIJ side. Our kind of like 3 ideas on how do we take on a project. And again, we take on projects that take an average of 8 months. For offshore leaks, we've been working with that data for over 2 years. There are like 3 things we have in mind, which is it a issue of global concern? Are we exposing a system that is meant to protect people, or is the system meaning to protect people broken? And the third thing is, are we likely to get a result? Basically, we found that our competitive edge, our added value is to produce cross-border collaborations on very complex topics and and that have global impact, so that a lot of countries would be interested in this. So that basically has a leg in every single country. I don't know, maybe we can call them octopus projects, where you have a very big topic that all of a sudden all these tentacles are just like touching all these countries. So whenever we take on a story, we think very hard whether it builds on these three things. We do also smaller things that are touch on very smaller, very few countries, but we found that's what's most successful to us. And for example, for the offshore leaks, last time I got a figure, and that was like several months ago. The offshore leaks project, as I was saying, more than 100 reporters in around 60 countries, around 50 media organizations, and citations in around 30,000 media articles. That's what we want to do, and we want to keep doing.
So, so for us, because we don't really do medium, long-term things, I guess there's like 4 pillars of content that we do. So we do scheduled stuff. So basically the unemployment figures, house prices, the kind of regular data release that you get out of government. We will do stories basically if we see them being talked about a lot on social media, or if they're trending on Facebook. It's kind of, you look at something and see, is there a data angle? In fact, this is really embarrassing. I commissioned a story about mangoes yesterday on the basis that every time I looked at Twitter, people in the UK were talking about a mango ban, and I've genuinely got no idea what the story is, and I haven't even read our take on it, but I just emailed and said, I keep seeing people talking about mangoes, this kind of what's going on with the mangoes, there must be a piece there. We follow the kind of political narrative of the UK, so there's kind of a rhythm to that. And then the other thing is we let people write about their obsessions. So that's something that courts do. They allow their kind of reporters to have an obsession they do. So Conrad's really interested in aeroplanes and flight, so he's done a couple of in-depth things about that. There was a story in the UK about soaring social media crime that was basically on the basis of some really, really ineptly done freedom of information requests. And I've kind of got a long-form piece completely taking that down and explaining what was so bad about those freedom of information requests. And I've just been working on it slowly, and that will come out at some point, but it's only just because I'm really interested in it, and we don't have that kind of long-term thing. I think we're too small to really plan that way. If we did an 8-month investigation, we just wouldn't publish anything for 8 months, and that's kind of, my bosses would definitely ask questions.
Marie? Yeah.
For us, it's a bit different because we have a direct return if the client says he will go back with us or no. But mainly the principal question are, if we are interested in the question or the subject at the first place, we try to go in it. And if we can do this otherwise that in data, for us it's a bit guidelines. Say, well, we cannot do this with just an article, just a paper sheet, so we can try it with the data.
Sorry, can I just add, I just remembered there was a part of your question about measures of success as well, and I didn't say that. So, so I have an editorial measure of success. Is it good? I think that's still important, that you can produce some things that aren't particularly popular and don't get a lot of traffic, but you think the story's important and it's been tackled in a good way. But for us, really, social media success is if our things are being shared a lot on Twitter or Facebook, then I consider that to be a success. We've kind of hit telling the story in a way that people wanted to share. And what I find with that is that if you get a lot of interaction on Twitter straight away, that doesn't necessarily drive a lot of traffic. We produce these kind of like poster things, usually having a go at the government, and it's like we've trained an army of Twitter people to retweet anything with David Cameron's face on it without reading the article. But actually, if you get a lot of action like that, often it shows that the thing will then probably do well on Facebook, so try and work out how to present it on Facebook, because Facebook drives a lot more traffic than Twitter does for us.
Can we ask questions? I basically set up a catalog with different measurement figures that I try to use every time we finish a project. So I do controlling basically on that, and it consists of quantitative and qualitative measurements. It's of course how did the story go on Twitter, how did the story go on Facebook, but also in terms of reader feedback and how many comments did we get, what was the quality of the comments, and as you said, Martin, yeah, was it good? Was it from an editorial point of view, was it any good? And yeah, through that we try to learn and further, yeah, try to evolve and become better at what we're doing right now. And we would like to share that, so if you're interested, just ask.
Thank you all. I think we really have to stop now, so if you have more questions, you can maybe try to ask them directly to the panelists right now after the panel. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed this panel. If you would like to get the links and the presentations and slides which have been showed this morning, you can register on datajournalismschool.net. We will send an email to the list with all the material from this panel, but also from all the data journalism workshops we are having here. Thank you very much, and I can only encourage you to come to our other data journalism school panels and workshops. Thank you, everybody.